Hello. Today we are with Raghu Bala, CEO and founder of Synergetics.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you for having me, Sara.
So before we get started, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been in the software industry for about 30 years, originally from Singapore, and I've had multiple startups, 4 startups to date, and I just started the fifth one. So that's Synergetics. The 4 startups, 3 got sold to public companies and 1 to a private company. And in between those startup journeys, I've also worked for some larger companies like Yahoo, Pricewaterhouse, InfoSpace, Automotive.com, and so on, where I held executive positions. And apart from that, I also, at all times in my career, I've had the opportunity to teach. So I've held some sort of adjunct faculty positions at Columbia University. And then now online, I am the head learning facilitator for courses from MIT Sloan and Computer Science AI Lab through a platform called 2U. And so I'm the instructor for AI, blockchain, and decentralized finance, and published a number of books and in mostly technical topics. But I do have a fun side to me as well. So I did collaborate with a person from Cartoon Network and publish some comic books as well some time ago. So I do have that side, that creative side, outside of being a complete geek.
Well, you've had a very impressive career and journey so far. What inspired you to start Synergetics?
Yeah. So I've had my hands in AI for, I would say, close to 20 plus years. Back when I was at Yahoo, it was all AI actually. But what's happened with AI is it's not been in the mainstream among the B2C side of it. And most of the companies, B2B companies, except for the sort of Silicon Valley elite companies who have been using AI for a long time, the others have not really embraced it or used it to the extent that we are seeing it now. So I've had a lot of experience with AI for a while now. In addition to that, because I'm the instructor for this course, I've been teaching about AI for quite a long time, for about 8 years. And so when the time came when I sold my last company, which is a crypto wallet company, I said, okay, you know what? Do we do next? What's our next sort of gig here? and um, and I knew that AI is going to be good, but also I got some good advice as part of an accelerator. I got good advice from the folks there who said I was working on something in the metaverse, and one day they came to me and said, I think the money and in your background and all that, you should probably pivot into AI. So which is what we did. There's a lot of, as you know, and you must have read, there are a lot of startups chasing AI. So we wanted to do something slightly different. And so we started to specialize in agentic AI even before it was very popular back in 23. And then people started talking about it only around, I'd say, the first quarter of 2024, second quarter of 2024. So until then, when I used to talk about agents, people were like, what the heck are you talking about? But that's changed now. Everyone is talking about agents. But even there are some additional things that I can talk about that we do, which is different from everyone else.
So why don't you elaborate a little bit more on Synergetics and describe what it does, I'd say in practical terms for anyone who could be listening and what the problems it's trying to solve for and
Sure.
for who?
So our focus is both B2B and B2C, but primarily B2B right now. And in the B2B space, what we see is 90, maybe 95% of all the startups are focused on agents that perform a single task. But let me back up by saying our core thesis is that the future of work within the enterprise will leverage both human capital as well as digital human capital. So this digital humans or agents would manifest themselves either as avatars, chatbots, voice agents, could be embedded systems, could be process-based agents, and so on. So this whole bucket of agents will be performing some tasks, and then humans will be performing some tasks. So we have started to see that sort of like a movement unfold in the last, I would say, 6 months to maybe 2-3 quarters, where companies are starting to use agents. And if you turn on your TV, you already see some large companies like ServiceNow has got Idris Elba doing some ads. And then you see Salesforce, Matthew McConaughey is doing some ads. So they are starting to spend a lot of money on trying to promote and educate enterprises on agents. So that's the same feeling we have. Now, when it comes to agents, let's just drill down a bit more. So you at the simplest case, you have an agent performing a particular task. So it could be that you're a small enterprise and you have an agent doing your accounting, like entering entries in QuickBooks or something like that. So that task can be augmented or replaced with agents, which can be doing things while you can spend your time doing something else as a small business owner, let's say. Now, if you step up to a medium to a larger company, that same finance function is just not just doing QuickBooks, but there'll be a bookkeeper, accountant, controller, CFO, and so on. There'll be a more full-fledged function. And so what happens is some of these roles might be agents and some of them might be humans. And so that workflow is an agentic workflow with what we call human in the loop. So certain things agents might do, and then human will go over and check, audit, make sure it's all okay, and then sign off and then move on. So that is a multi-agent workflow, and it's like the first one is more for an individual contributor. Here you have a team of agents working in concert. Now, if you go even one step further, let's say you go to a public company, that same finance function, you might have to interface with an external auditor. So in public companies, like you can do your books, but then since it's a public enterprise, the rules of GAAP rules in accounting, for example, say that you need an auditor to sign off on your work. So you might engage a KPMG or Deloitte or someone to come and do your books. Now, what will happen is very likely in those companies, because the amount of data that one has to go through is so huge that I see these auditing companies leveraging agents at some point to go through most of the entries using a bot, and then the partner will come in and sign off on what the bot did. That's going to happen with these auditing firms. Because I used to be with Pricewaterhouse. I know how auditing sort of works within such a big five company. So that's what's going to happen. So now you're going to have a situation you have an agent on the outside and an agent on your side. Both have to communicate with one another. Now, why I bring this particular example up, because there are other similar examples, like in healthcare, it's payer and provider communicating, and so on. So in each ecosystem, there's communication between agents that will happen. But that is not a very simple problem to solve, especially when there are more than one enterprise in the mix. So the first of all, there's lack of trust. So they have to identify one another to make sure that there are no bad actors. There has to be a place to put what we call a decentralized ID, so that these agents can communicate, but they can also verify and authenticate each other's identity. And also there needs to be a protocol for communication. So what is that protocol? How do they talk to one another? So when humans talk to agents like Avatar or whatever, you're going to talk in English. Humans can only communicate in natural languages. But then when agents talk to one another, using natural language is not really the most effective. So you need a protocol. So we went about filing a patent for that protocol, and we got approved. We got the full patent approved in February of this year. Now, our original business plan was we were going around building agents for enterprises, and then my thought was, well, this whole communication between agents was a 2026 roadmap item for us. Even though we had built it, but we were not actively selling it because we said companies are going to take time to get there. But as with everything, things have become very accelerated in the AI market. Google published something called A2A, which is agent to agent protocol, which is a subset of what we do. So we made ourselves compliant with A2A, but we have a lot more other capabilities. So what happens is now everything in our business plan is accelerated, I would say almost 3 quarters forward, so that what we anticipated doing in 2026, we're doing now. So it's really moved very, very quickly. But this is an area that we have a lot of expertise. We have a patent, a lot of IP, around this area. So that's sort of differentiator between us and many other players.
So right now, just to kind of really simplify it, Synergetics is a platform that allows agents to talk to each other between organizations.
That's one way of saying it. We also allow you to build your own agents, like custom agents. So if you see in the market, like Microsoft, Salesforce, and so on, they're selling agents, but those are agents which use their software. We allow a platform for you to build your own custom agent to do whatever that you want to get done within your company. So you can build custom agents, and we also embrace third-party agents built on other platforms. We allow them to we ingest those agents and enable them to communicate with one another. So we're not forcing people to just use our agents, but we can take a third-party agent and it can communicate with some other agent. So we are like we are like an interoperability layer, if you want to think about it.
And you mentioned, and this is clear, that the technology and development is moving extremely fast.
Mhm.
Now, what about the buyer? Let's talk about the buyer and user. I'm just so curious to hear your opinion on, can the human keep up? And are the buyers getting smarter and more experimental? And are you seeing trends in the people who are like the first adopters? And what, for someone who isn't really that highly versed in AI, but knows that they have to learn it to, continue to be worthy in like their current role, what advice can you give people?
Sure. So that's a I have to peel the onion on that
Yeah, I know it
question.
might be a
Many
lot right
layers to it,
there.
but it's a very good question. So it's a very good question. So let me get to it quickly here. So what happens is the first part of it, are they well versed in it? How much do they know about agents, right? And so one of the things that I think is necessary is for us to educate the customer. Because customer might be at different stages of maturity in terms of their knowledge, and so we have to educate them. So even yesterday, I did a hour, maybe almost like 75-minute podcast on LinkedIn. It's a live event where there's a master class on AI, where I took people from way back where AI started up to agents of today and went through everything. And I think there'll be a recording that I'll put up on LinkedIn. My company will put up for others to watch if they miss the event. But the point is, we have to educate people, and so not everyone is completely up to speed. So that's the first part. Now, in engaging with customers, are they experimental or are they doing production level work? So I would say that both. And this is where I feel that some of the early AI systems that are out there, or agentic systems are out there, and this we have seen before in the client server arena when the first internet boom came about and so on. The initial products tend to be what we call toys. They're not really for production level adoption. You cannot run your business on it. And so we have seen, I think, the first set of toys come and go, and we are more serious, focused on scalable solutions, and we have gotten a lot of endorsements that I'll talk about later on. But based on the seriousness of how we take this problem and solve it, and so it requires an industrial strength set of capabilities in the platform to enable this to be used in a production level instance. So now, in terms of customers, how are they using it? So customers, we are finding that uh, in the some of them who are kicking the tires are trying to use it for some simple use cases. And I say this not very, somewhat lightly, but it's not really simple. Not everything is simple, but I'll tell you, there's a wrong way to do it and a right way to do it. And so in AI, what happens is there's a kind of a core way in which you can bring something to market. First is you have to train a model. And after you train a model, then you have to test that model against some sample data to make sure that your model is doing things the way you anticipated it to do. If it's not good enough, you have to go back and retrain until you keep iterating until which time you get it to be at a quality level that's acceptable. Now, one of the things that I find somewhat disconcerting is there are some players that are out there that are saying that, okay, we'll just take an out of the box model and then just give me some of your data and you have an AI system in 20 minutes. And to me, those are the That's not as easy as it is actually. And so what happens is you get these really bad experiences, and then there are some statistics where people are getting turned off because the results are not accurate. So those are the type of toy systems that I talk about. Now, the real way to do it is you have to fine tune your models. That means you take out of the box model and you have to fine tune your model to the point that it's really accurate. And that we follow a very rigorous 4-step process by which we take industry data, sub segment data, customer data, and then company data and customer data. So, for example, if it is insurance, I'll take general insurance information in the industry. Then I might take auto insurance. Then I might, let's say my customer is Allstate. I'll say, okay, Allstate. And then I'll say customer data for Allstate, so that it's a model that is very targeted towards that customer base, and it's going to be very accurate in its responses. And this has to be run in a kind of a cloud environment that is private to the client, so that there's no sort of loss of data, privacy, and all of those concerns have to be taken care of, and so on. So you cannot operate it like a SaaS model of the past. SaaS was what we call multi-tenant. Everyone sort of rides together in the same bus. Here, yeah, exactly. You share down there. You share here. You almost have to create your own bubble and put system in that bubble so that you have privacy and you don't sort of like bleed data out to systems and other systems and so on. So it's a different way of running it, different way of training it, and so on. So that's what we have, and we educate our customers. We have very good results with our early customers who are paying customers in our network, and we're very proud of it because that's we are doing it the right way. And that's the sort of, you have to separate the wheat from the chaff sort of thing that is going on in the industry right now.
Can you give an example using one of your current customers and how they've used your product? Kind of real simple, like what was the problem they were facing, what solution of your offering they implemented, and the outcome, and how that helped the problem for the company.
So one of the areas, and this is a very peculiar area, but mental health. Everyone talks about mental health, and the problem is there are not enough mental health practitioners for the amount of demand that's on the market. And so, like for example, your counselors are not necessarily available 24/7. And so, one of our customers is actually using AI agents to fill the gap so that it works hand in hand with human counselors and so on. But let's say that you have an episode, you are an addict, you have an episode for drug, alcohol, or gambling addiction, and it's 2 a.m. on a Thursday night, okay? And you're asking for help, but the counselor is only available on Monday morning. That's too late. And probably that's the practical reality, but that's too late for you because you need some help right now. So what do you do? So our customer is a company called My Support in Miami, and what we have done with them is to develop these counselor agents, and they can take the form of avatar or voice or sound and whatnot, and they can give you practical advice. And these counseling agents have been trained on the 12-step program, on the steps that you do, and they can listen and talk and counsel you so that you do not take certain drastic steps. And they can operate in two ways. One is they can operate by working with you and then forwarding it on to a human agent who's available on Monday or whenever the next time, or they can dispense advice that will sort of get you back on track, and so that you felt that you had to vent or talk about something, and you're sort of, you feel better about yourself. So this need has been it's a need that we are fulfilling through the use of AI agents. And it's a really good use case, and we are working at rehab facilities with some of the online gaming site. If you see all the ads on TV for, let's say, a DraftKings or FanDuel and so on, you'll see if you have a problem gambler problem, you have this type of addiction problems, you dial this number, but there can be an agent on the other side actually working with you. It may not be a human agent, it can be a AI a counselor, which has been trained on the whole protocol of how to handle these types of issues, and available 24 by 7 in 100 different languages, which I think fulfills a massive gap in the industry. It's not just using technology for technology's sake, but actually fulfilling a need in the market, and in this case, in the time of need also. So it's a really good use case. We are very proud of it.
I really like that. I've heard some other companies doing this too, and the way they kind of present it is it's like a secondary expert to support
Yes.
that person, and the avatar can look like them and the voice can sound like them.
So that's one that we have done, and there are several others which have got efficiency things, like one company in LA works with electronic medical record systems, and they spend every clinic. This is a physical therapy centers. They spend an inordinate amount of time doing data entry into the EMR, several hours a day, and we're able to cut down the case load time from several hours to several minutes. And so, what does that mean? That means that the person who's working there can now spend more time with the patients, not in front of the computer. That's a huge improvement in the quality of care, if you look at it that way.
I'm going to give you another use case because this is one of my pet peeves with EMRs or just the whole communication system between patient and doctor's office. You might have a question for your doctor and you have to go into my chart and write them, and then it gets triaged by nurses. It doesn't actually go directly to the doctor. And sometimes the nurses, they pick and choose who I hate to say this out loud, but it happens, who they want to write back. And sometimes you don't hear back at all. And I think a situation where an agent can take over that role and have at least some of the knowledge to be able to respond immediately and not have to get triaged would be great.
Yeah, it's great, and it'll do it fast, and it'll be. Well, I'm going to say one word which is very important in the industry. You can be very unbiased. There is no, you know, unbeknownst to ourselves, sometimes we are prejudiced. So there's no prejudice here. You don't care whether old, young, what gender, what color, whatever. Nothing. It just looks at the data and says, okay, you know what? I think doctor, this person needs this sort of assistance, or it can summarize it, so the doctor also doesn't need to deal with a whole lot of text. It can get it down to a few bullets and say, okay, you know what, these are some of the things you should look at. These markers are off a bit, and maybe watch out for them, and the doctor can immediately get the noise out and focus. Oh, okay, I see, blood pressure is off, or or whatnot, blah 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 blah, down to the nuts and bolts, and that way you can get to the resolution much faster.
Or even just helping patients get medications, because a lot of the times insurance companies are immediately saying no, and you have to authorization, and then you have to fill out all these forms. And there's this whole process, and nobody has time for that.
Yeah. So that payer and provider communication part of it is a big one that we feel is very inefficient in terms of time and cost and accuracy. That we feel that this agent-agent communication. In fact, when I was at MIT giving a talk, maybe 4 weeks ago, that's one area that I focused on, and saying that this again, the use of agents. You want to talk about a really good use case? This is one of them.
One of the best. I hear constant complaints, and I've had my own experience. So, getting back to Synergetics, there are, because it is happening so fast, there's always new players. Um, how are you differentiating yourself from other companies that are coming out with AI agents that can create that avatar that eventually can communicate with one another? I think the first time we spoke, you mentioned that you've had this long history of experience and you're probably one of the first movers, but obviously there's going to be people coming in pretty quickly. So how do you see yourself different? Obviously your experience is one, but what else?
So one of the things I think, this is something we do, and I think everyone in the industry should also do, is we don't try to boil the ocean, in the sense that when we build our platform, some parts are built internally and some parts we license other people's technologies. so that there are specialists in each area. So, for example, I'll give you the case of voice. We partner with certain companies who already build those voice capabilities. So the avatar is like the actor, and then the voice is like another company, but we glue those two together, so it's saying something, but it's two different technologies that we marry together. And the knowledge base is through our platform, but some of the on-screen actors and voice is coming from different parties. And then there's also companies who take that voice transcript, and it's a startup that I actually mentor. And I said, okay, I'm not going to build what you're building. You already built this. Let's just bolt it onto what we have, and we'll be your distribution arm. You'll get distribution through us, because now we can take your technology and go to all of our customers that you can't do on your own. So it's a kind of a win-win. And so what happens is we can take that voice analysis bit that they built and use it immediately. And so it's a kind of a rev share agreement, and they win, we win. So a lot of the things that we do, we actually constantly talk to other companies in the space to say, what, let's see what you're doing. And they'll come to us, and we'll say, hey, what, that makes a lot of sense. Why should I want to build this? I might as well use your stuff. So we try to find that. I always say in business deals, it's 1 + 1 = 5. So it's like, where can we get 1 + 1 = 5 sort of deal? So we do that. So that's one way in which we're keeping up with everything that's going on in the field. Because if you sit down to build everything, it's never ending, and you're probably gonna fall behind. So you have to partner. That's definitely number one. Number two, we spend a lot of time, effort, and energy and resources, money wise and otherwise, on R&D. So we are constantly sharing within the. We have daily scrums and other things, but all of us are saying, "Hey, do you see this? Do you see that? Do you read this? Do you see that?" And it's constantly going on, and we have to pick and choose our battles, because not everything tends to be relevant. We have to say, okay, this is good, but we have to also figure out a way to discard so many things that come around, because they're not very permanent. It'll be replaced by something else tomorrow. So we have to select our battles in terms of keeping up.
Yeah, you mentioned the toys, and with other people I've been talking with, words that I'm hearing a lot are consolidation and partnerships, which you've kind of just tapped on as well. How do you see that playing out over the next year? Because the technology got to a place where people now could really just start building and presenting things that people can use. But like you said, brings out a bunch of things that people might try out and then not really adopt. What do you see happening over the next year?
Yeah, I see. First of all, like all the, I think, bit players and not so serious platforms and so on, I think those will get weeded out very soon, and by the customer and the market and so on. So that's number one. Number two, I think among the sort of fittest survive sort of mindset, among the fittest, I think there'll be some mergers and consolidation among them. And then I also am seeing larger players acquire these smaller companies, because for them to build it on their own, they're going to take another year or two, and there's no time. You got to move quickly, so they will acquire to get that capability immediately. So I think both those trends will happen: mergers between companies, and then also acquisitions. And I'm already starting to see, and in our case, we even are being approached by potential acquirers right now, and we are looking at it seriously with the mindset of, if we keep on growing, where do we go? Or if we sell, or partially or fully, then where does that take us? So these are things that we have to also look at from time to time.
So let's talk about your role as CEO. What's taking up your time and what are your top three responsibilities that you're thinking about most closely right now?
So I think there are three parts, and then there are ancillary parts. But the three main parts are product and engineering. They're sort of related. And then sales and marketing. I mean, those are the two that, and then those two areas are important: product and engineering, and then sales and marketing. Now, the third area as CEO is, of course, funding. So funding is, keeps the lights on and so on. But we need that at this embryonic stage. But the goal is to get enough ARR that sort of we can stand on our own 2 feet without external funding. And we are slowly but surely getting towards that goal. But at least for now, for runway purposes and scaling and growing, and also in my past startups, I'm not afraid to even do acquisitions at this point. If we had a kind of like a war chest of money to acquire other companies, because we have to go very quickly. Organic growth or inorganic growth are both fine. So we are always looking at these three aspects: sales, marketing, product and engineering, and then funding. That's where I spend my time. And in fact, I dedicate the mornings and afternoons for the sales and marketing and funding. And then because my team is offshore, I spend the evenings on product and engineering, so that the team is aligned with all the business goals, and there has to be alignment in where the mission and what's going on the customer with customer conversations, with how we are building it and so on. So those two have to align very closely.
This question is also related to sales because it really does impact your message and how you talk about your offering and who you sell to. How are you staying focused?
So that's a very, very good question and hits to the heart of certain problems. I'll tell you why. So let's say that, and I sort of like am a bit preachy with my own developers sometimes, but I tell them this. Let's say that we have a customer and you build a customer service agent, just for sake of example. If you get too close to the customer, you're customizing it so much for this customer that it's unusable with someone else. So you always have to keep a distance and look at it, what is generic and what is specific. So that means you build a customer service agent which is usable across the spectrum, either different industry or different customers in the same industry, doesn't matter. And then you have to have a kind of some configurability that makes it very customized to a customer. So you try to maintain both. You play the game at two levels. One level is the generic agent, and then second level is how some configuration that makes it special for that particular customer. So they feel that this is mine, as opposed to this is just a garden variety thing that everyone gets. So it's important to keep that both those things in play.
And then for the specific, because there's always that training time to understand a individual business. How long is that taking for you guys?
Yeah. So what we do is we do what is known as an assessment. And during the assessment phase with the customer, there are four aspects to it: people, process, tools, and data. We work on all these four dimensions. So when we engage the customer and we look at their pain points and try to understand their business and so on, but we also look at what sort of personnel do you have? Are your people adequate, or do they need to be retrained, and do they need to learn new skills and those types of things? Second is process. What happens is a lot of times when you go into companies, they have something working, but they don't have any standard operating procedure or manual to describe what they're doing in any particular function. So what we notice is there's a lot of tribal knowledge. So work is moving around the office, but people's heads, they don't put it down on paper. So if you want to automate anything, you can't automate because you don't know how things are flowing. So we tend to want to document things first, to say, okay, let's put a flow chart or something together to figure out how work is moving around, and then we figure out, okay, this area can benefit from automation, or this other area can benefit, but these other areas need to be still human in the loop because those need human intervention. So getting the tribal knowledge out is the process dimension. Then the third is tools. So sometimes companies are using antiquated tools, older platforms, older versions, and so on, that they need to upgrade and so on before they can get ready for using AI. And then the last one is data. So data is the new oil, like they say, and without data, there's no AI. So are you collecting enough data? Is it cleansed? Is it stitched? Is it code, all that. You have to do all that properly before you can even jump into doing AI.
But you mean clean data?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or if you don't have clean data, you have to fabricate it and create synthetic data or whatever. But all that is important. So this assessment phase, to answer your question, typically lasts about a month. For larger companies, maybe 6 weeks, 2 months, but not more than that. At that point, we have a sort of a understanding of the maturity of a company in desire to adopt AI. So now we know the people, process, tools, and data dimensions of this company. Then we can start to identify, okay, you know what, let's go after certain functions. Which function can benefit quickly with the use of AI, and let's get that done. Now everyone feels a little bit better about themselves because we got one sort of project under the belt. And then it also gives management some sort of data points to kind of like, invest more, that they've seen some results, some KPIs, and then we expand. So that's the approach that we are taking.
Yeah, I like that. It's really consultative and then the land and expand start with a
Yes.
proof point. Yeah, that's really great. I know we talked about some challenges that many AI companies are facing. What's the biggest issue impacting you right now?
For us, I think we have not had too many problems with sales or product, but the main thing for us is funding has been the biggest challenge. That has got its own sort of things that have happened in the industry, macro things, as well as because even like venture capital itself is sort of changing, as we know, because it used to be venture capital, but now most venture capital companies are spending on scaling companies, not as initial investors, but once you have gotten to a certain amount of ARR, then only they want to come in and you know put more oil into the fire to blow it up. That's their game plan nowadays. So most VC firms are in that bucket. There are some micro VC firms, and then there are accelerators, and then some friends and family and different sort of investments that one needs to take, SBA loan and those types of things, in order to get past that first phase, and then also get customers to prove some things before you can approach institutional funding. So that sort of passage is a difficult one. It's not easy for us or anyone else, and we know other companies in the same sort of boat. So that's been a challenge. But on the other front, thankfully, we have a very experienced team. We have a very good product, and we have gotten a lot of good endorsements that is helping sort of like validate our story.
Yes, you've had good press lately. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we got covered in Forbes recently, which is a big name media. And none of what I'm talking about here is paid for. It's all organic. Other people writing about us, which is very good. And so Forbes was one. Second one was on MSN, a large investor, Tim Draper. And Draper is quite well known, especially in the crypto and blockchain circles. And he was talking about our technology in that forum in MSN. And then we also had some endorsements from the MIT Media Lab. We work very closely with them on one of their initiatives called Project Nanda, which is a registry of agents. And so it's like a yellow pages of agents. And so we were one of the contributors to that effort. And they gave us a good thumbs up on LinkedIn. And so those endorsements definitely validate what we have done, and how far our technology is vis-a-vis the competition. So those things are translating into sales and also investor interest. So that's been very healthy and helpful.
That's great. For younger founders who are looking to build AI and enterprise tech, with your background and experience, is there a lesson that you can offer that would be crucial for them to know and have in their back pocket going into it?
So there are different ways to sort of go after this. You can be horizontal and be a platform, and that's the type of approach we are taking. And then a quicker approach, which is maybe less risky, is to a vertical approach, which is more of an application approach for a particular domain or industry and solve that. So it really depends where your own experience lies. So if you are already experienced or have knowledge in a particular space, and you have some domain knowledge or deep domain knowledge in a space, that might be a quicker entry, because when you build platforms, it requires a lot of experience across multiple domains and that type of thing. So I think for younger founders, if they identify a problem in a particular area domain, that might be the quicker entry point, and I'd advise going that way actually.
That makes a lot of sense. Focus on one niche first, do it well, and then expand. Well, Raghu, you're a wealth of knowledge. If somebody would want to get in touch with you to learn more about you or Synergetics, where should they go to get more information?
So in general, I point them towards LinkedIn. It's quite easy. Just type in my name. I usually come up quite among the first few. And if not, you can also email me at Raghu, just my first name, at synergetics.ai, and I'll be happy to respond to you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great conversation.